Chapter 14. Clouds drifted across the sky, obscuring the thin sliver of moon. The Joseph Bell trolled out its midnight message to the slumbering countryside. A warm, soft drizzle was falling over the parched meadows and dry woodlands, bringing relief after the hot, dry day, dampening down the dust from the road. In the ditch, a frog opened his eyes, disturbed by something slight noise from the hedgerow. It blinked. There was 3 figures creeping along, or 2. The frog remained perfectly still. There seemed to be 2 creatures, and some sort of shadow. The moon came out from behind a cloud. It was 2 huge rats, and a dark, shadowy something. They crept along under the cover of the hedge towards a big dwelling of the mouse folks. Rats were hunters. Thankfully, they had not noticed him. The frog stayed motionless and let them pass. It was none of his business. Clooney, Ragier, and Shadow padded noiselessly towards the Redwall. This was such an important mission that Clooney had decided to come along and supervise it personally. Around Shadow's waist was strapped a skin pouch. It contained a thin, strong rope, a padded grappling hook, a vial of oil, and some lockpicks and a dagger, Shadow's usual burglary kit. Ragier ambled proudly along, feeling that he had been specially picked to accompany his chief on such a vital task. Little did he know that Clooney had only included him as an insurance. If they should get into a tight corner, Ragier would serve as an expendable fool. That's the way Clooney would make good for his own escape. The trio halted beneath the lofty abbey walls. Clooney silenced them with a wave of his tail, then vanished into the night. Ragier felt distinctively nervous at being left alone with Shadow. He attempted a whispering conversation. "Nice drops of rain, eh, Shadow? Good for the grass. Blow me, these walls are pretty high. I'm glad you're climbing them and not me. I'd never make it. Too fat. Ha 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 ha." Ragier's voice trailed off. He fumbled with his whiskers, wilting beneath the basilisk stare of Shadow's dead black eyes. He shuddered and fell silent. Within 10 minutes, Clooney was back. He nodded up at the parapet. I've been up and down the length of the wall for a fair distance. The sentry mice are all asleep. The fools. They've never had to do guard duty before. As soon as night falls, so do their eyelids. That's what soft living does for you. Ragier's head bobbed in agreement. "You're right, Chief. If they were in our army and old Redtooth got them, Susan, he'd—" "Shut your trap, stupid," Clooney hissed. "Are you ready, Shadow? Don't forget your instructions." Shadow bared his yellowed fangs and started climbing. Slowly he made his way upwards, like a long black reptile, his claws seeking hidden niches and crevices in the sandstone. Ever upwards, something stopped spreading, eagled across the advantage of every crack and joint in the wall. No other animal in Clooney's army could have attempted such an ascent, but Clooney was a climbing expert. He concentrated his whole being on the job at hand, sometimes clinging to stones by no more than a single claw. Below on the ground, Clooney and Ragier strained their eyes upwards. They could hardly make out his shape. He was not far from the top of the wall. Shadow shifted in position and levered his back, legs, and tail. Now he wedged his claws into the fissure and stretched upwards, gaining inch by inch. On the top of the wall, Brother Edmund was snoring gently. He was nestled in a pile of rubble, wrapping a warm blanket with his hood up against the light rain. Edmund was oblivious to the long, sharp claws that latched themselves over the parapet edge. A moment later, the sleek black head appeared. 2 dense obsidian eyes stared at the sleeping mouse. Shadow had succeeded in climbing the abbey wall. Like a sinuous black lizard, he slithered past slumbering creatures and around rubble heaps, never once making a sound. Friar Hugo mumbled gently in his sleep and moved his head so that his cowl slid off. Drizzle fell upon the fat friar's face, threatening to wake him up. Gently as night breeze, Shadow replaced the hood. Pausing for an instant, Shadow looked about for descending the stone steps from the ramparts to the cloisters. Using shrubs and bushes as cover, he moved furtively forwards, never taking a needless chance or making sudden movements. Sometimes he stopped and waited, letting the minutes tick away as he planned his next progression, gliding like a cloud shadow upon the ground by the moon. The door to the great hall was not locked. Shadow judged that the latch was probably old and creaky. He took out the vial of oil and lubricated the latch and hinges. Carefully he inched the door ajar. Apart from a tiny squeak, it swung effortlessly open. Sliding inside, he released the door by mistake. A swift night breeze slammed it shut with a dull thud. Shadow cursed inwardly, flung himself behind a nearby pillar. He lay inert, not daring to breathe. 1, 2, 3 minutes. Good. Nobody had been disturbed by the noise. He ventured out to inspect the tapestry that hung upon the wall. A black moth on the moonless night would not have escaped Shadow's notice. He needed no lamp to scrutinize the thing before him. So this was a picture of the warrior mouse that Clooney lusted after. Using his razor-sharp fangs, he began gnawing into the ancient tapestry, working from the tasseled hem upwards. Matthias tossed and turned in his bed, exhausted, but unable to sleep. His mind revolved around a host of problems and schemes: the sword, Martin's grave, defense of the abbey, cornflower. Finally, after much kicking and rumpling of the sheets, sleep started to take over. It was somewhere in the long deserted room, not unlike Redwall Abbey. A voice called him. "Matthias." "Oh, go away," the young mouse muttered drowsily. "Get someone else. I'm tired." But the voice persisted, boring into his mind. "Matthias, Matthias, I need you." He peered down the length of the darkened hall. "What is it? Why do you need me?" Matthias began to walk towards the voices. He could hear a wicked snigger followed by a cry of despair. "Matthias, help me! Don't let them take me!" He ran forwards. The hall seemed to grow longer. "Who are you? Where are you?" Far ahead in the murky darkness, Matthias could vaguely distinguish a figure leaning out of the wall. It was a mouse in armor. "Please, Matthias, you must help me quickly." Bump! Matthias landed on the floor of his bedroom. Sheets were tangled about his body. Slowly he sat up and rubbed his eyes. What a strange thing! A long hall and a plea for help. The armored mouse. Matthias felt the fur in his back neck raising. Of course, it had to be. The great hall. Martin the warrior. Something terrible was going on downstairs. He was needed urgently. Matthias kicked the sheet from him as he leaped up and dashed headlong from the bedroom, along the dormitory corridors, and helter-skelter down the spiral staircase. Through cavern hole he clattered in the darkness, stumbling and tripping over furniture. His head hammered loudly and legs pumped like twin pistons. Matthias fell over the top stairs and went sprawling into the great hall. He lay on the floor, gazing through the gloom of the tapestry. Martin was still there, but he was moving. Was it breeze? No, it couldn't be. The likeness of the warrior was jiggling as though it were being tugged in some way. Matthias couldn't see a shadow, but there was nothing to cast it. He jumped to his feet and ran forwards as the picture of Martin was ripped away from the tapestry. A rat held it. There was no doubt in Matthias's mind. It was a rat, entirely black from tip to tail, barely distinguishable from the night itself. Shadow heard the footsteps on the floor behind him. With a cold, calculated detachment, he wheeled upon his opponent as his opponent charged. He was certain to defeat such a small creature in combat, but his orders were to get the picture, not to fight little mice. Besides, there was always an additional hazard that the mice might hang on him and shout for help until it came. Like a wreath of oily smoke, Shadow completed a clever double maneuver. Bowling his body into a forward roll, he knocked Matthias down like a skittle. Bounding up, he slipped around the door, slamming it, and fled off through the cloisters. Matthias sprang up, roaring at the top of his voice, "Stop that rat! Stop that rat!" Immediately, the mice on sentry duty were alerted. As Shadow ran, he saw Constance dash across the grounds at an angle that would cut him off from the stairs up to the rampart. Switching direction, he made to the next set of stairs, silently cursing the badger. Now he would have to use his climbing rope to descend quickly to the road. Matthias emerged from the abbey. He saw Shadow change direction. Thinking fast, he ran diagonally, catching up with the thief at the foot of the stairs. Throwing himself in a flying tackle, Matthias grabbed Shadow by the leg, sending him crashing on the lower steps. Still clinging to the tapestry, Shadow wriggled like an eel. Turning over on his back, he kicked savagely at the young mouse's head with a free foot. Matthias tried valiantly to hang on, but his larger and heavier opponent kicked him viciously in the face again and again. The big bony foot, with its sharp claws pounding and gouging away, soon took its toll. Matthias went limp and black out. Constance had mounted the far steps. Gaining the rampart, she ran along, dodging the heaps of rubble. She saw Matthias go down under the onslaughts of kicks and ran even faster. Impeded by mice all around who scattered in panic, thinking they were under a mass invasion. The only one besides Constance who had sensed what was happening was Cornflower's father. Being nearer to the top of the stairs than the badger, he ran straight into the intruder. Shadow was struggling to get out his climbing rope. "Surrender, rat! I got you!" cried Mr. Field Mouse, as he grabbed hold of the thief. But rummaging in his pouch to free the rope, Shadow's claw had closed on the handle of his dagger. He drew it out swiftly and drove it twice into the field mouse's unprotected body. Constance arrived just as the victim fell, wounded. Shadow turned on her with the dagger upraised. The Constance swung her paw round in a mighty arc and caught Shadow square in the chin. The force of the blow lifted the thief clean off his feet, and before Constance could grab hold of him, he overbalanced and hurtled over the edge of the parapet with a horrible scream. Downward he plunged, and his body thundered off the unyielding Manasori. He landed on the wet roadway with a sickening crunch. Clooney came dashing towards the stricken Shadow, with Rager scuttling in his wake. Despite his appalling injuries, Shadow managed to lever himself up on one paw. "Clooney, I'm hurt. Help me," he gasped. The piece of tapestry lay upon the road. Clooney snatched it up eagerly. Behind him he could hear the gatehouse bolts being withdrawn amid the shouts of angry mice. Ruthlessly he kicked Shadow's broken body. "Get up and run for it, or stay there, fool. I don't carry cripples or burglars." Leaving the injured Shadow to the mice, Clooney sped off across the road. He covered the width of the ditch with a mighty leap and ran off across the meadows. In open country he would outdistance any mice who dared follow him. Waving the tapestry, Clooney laughed in exhilaration as he put on an extra burst of speed. Ragier had panicked completely. He did not jump the ditch, so he scuttled off down the road in the opposite direction from where they came. A group of mice led by Brother Alf tried fording the ditch and climbing up into the meadow. Unfortunately, the rain had made the going hard and slippery. Clooney was long gone, and the tapestry with him. Turning back to Redwall, the pursuers came upon Matthias. He was leaning on Friar Hugo's arm in a dazed condition. Painfully he staggered up upon the road to where Shadow was laying. Munching, he cast about, searching the muddy road for a fragment of tapestry. "It's got to be here somewhere," cried Matthias. He fell upon the injured Shadow, searching his waist pouch, his flat black eyes clouding over. Clooney watched Matthias. Logically he spoke. His voice sounded strangely calm. "Too late, Mouse. Matthias Martin is with Clooney now." It was the last thing Shadow ever said. He gave one final shudder and lay dead.